religious persecution is tied to political repression and weakening institutions in Nigeria. Example, the detention of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu is a clear example. In 2022, Nigeria's Court of Appeal struck down the charges against him and ordered his release. The UN Working Group on Arbitrary Detention has also called for his unconditional release. Yet he remains in solitary confinement, in deteriorating health, and recently had to represent himself in court. Nigeria has signaled.
So we're seeing a big shift in the Nnamdi Kanu case. US Congress has now spoken up, and this is shaking things up on the international scene. You probably know that Kanu, the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, has been at the center of a major political and legal drama in Nigeria. The Nigerian government has been locking him up even after the courts ruled that he should be released. The Court of Appeal had actually shut down all charges against him in 2022, but he's still been held in solitary confinement, facing deteriorating health. The interesting thing here is how the world is starting to notice. Congressman John James, representing the US, took the time to bring up Kanu's case during a public hearing about designating Nigeria as a country of particular concern. This label is usually given to countries that have serious human rights issues. Representative John James raised the issue by saying that Nnamdi Kanu is a clear example of how Nigeria is violating the rule of law. He made a point that in 2022, the Court of Appeal ordered Kanu's release, yet he remained imprisoned. He talked about how Kanu's health has been rapidly declining while being held in solitary confinement, and how, more recently, Kanu has had to represent himself in court. This is not normal for anyone, especially not a political prisoner. Representative John James didn't hold back. He went on to say that Nigeria has treated this entire case as though the law is optional. He even added that targeting Christians, particularly in the southeast where Kanu is from, seems like fair game to the government. Now, I don't need to tell you that the statements are huge. It's not every day that US lawmakers speak out about a case like this, and the attention this is getting is significant. So why is this a big deal? What's happening here is that US lawmakers are getting involved in a case that was, until now, mostly discussed within Nigerian borders. They're not just talking about Kanu's imprisonment. They're questioning the entire system in Nigeria. And this brings up the broader issue of Nigeria's judicial system and its treatment of political dissenters. Kanu's case has become symbolic of a much larger issue: the abuse of power and the disregard for human rights. The US Congress is calling Nigeria out for this, and they're putting international pressure on them. But that's just one side of it. The second part of this is how Nigeria reacts. So far, the Nigerian government has ignored the court's order to release Kanu. Even with global pressure mounting, the Nigerian government seems to be pushing back. The fact that Kanu has remained in prison, despite the ruling, is telling. This is not just a legal issue anymore. It's a political one, and it's creating a diplomatic problem. It puts Nigeria in the hot seat, where they have to explain why they're not honoring court rulings and why they're keeping someone locked up, especially when that person's health is deteriorating. We need to understand the implications of this, and it goes beyond Kanu himself. This case is a wake-up call for the international community about what's happening inside Nigeria. It's not just about Kanu, but about a pattern of political persecution. When you see something like this happening to a high-profile leader, it raises red flags about how other lesser-known cases might be treated in the country. The reality is that the Nigerian government's actions are now being scrutinized by the world. And that's a big deal. If the US and other countries continue to speak out, it could lead to consequences like sanctions or pressure to improve human rights. Now, let's talk about what might come next. With the US now stepping in, there could be more international calls for justice. If pressure continues to build, it's possible that Kanu could eventually be released, but that depends on whether the Nigerian government is willing to listen to the international community. It could lead to a shift in how the Nigerian government approaches these cases. The thing is, when the world is watching, it's harder for the government to sweep issues like this under the rug. The hope is that this will eventually force more transparency and accountability from Nigeria's leaders. But what does all this mean for you, the average Nigerian citizen? Well, it means that your voice matters. Global attention is turning toward Nigeria, and it's bringing light to a lot of issues that have been going on for years. Your voice, your story, it all contributes to the bigger picture. If you've been following this case, you know that this fight is not just about one man. It's about standing up for human rights and justice. It's about ensuring that the law applies to everyone, no matter who they are or where they come from. So, I want you to think about what this means for the future of Nigeria. How does this case impact you? How does it affect how you view your own country's legal and political systems? Do you feel like the courts are fair? Are the people in power listening to your concerns? These are questions that, as Nigerians, we need to be asking ourselves. The truth is, the more we talk about these issues, the harder it becomes for the government to ignore them. And as we talk about Nnamdi Kanu's case, it's important to realize that the international spotlight isn't just on him. It's on Nigeria as a whole. If this case leads to changes in how political prisoners are treated or how dissent is handled in Nigeria, that could be a huge turning point. But again, it depends on whether the Nigerian government decides to make real changes. International attention can only do so much. Change has to come from within. Now, I want to hear from you. What do you think? Do you think the US stepping in will lead to Kanu's release? Or do you think this is just more noise that won't really affect anything? And what about the Nigerian government? How long can they keep ignoring the law and the courts? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your take on all this. And don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe to the channel for more updates. We've got to stay informed and keep the conversation going, especially on important topics like this. I'll be back with more updates soon. Until then, stay strong, stay informed, and keep the fight for justice alive.